Hi, Amina, and thanks so much for joining me today. As the Chief Inclusion Officer and Global People Director at Oliver Agency, what does your day-to-day role entail?
Um, Thanks. Nice to see you. Good afternoon. So I wear two hats, as you can tell by the two job titles. So my kind of one of the kind of major focuses of my global people director role is ensuring that we have a motivated, engaged, and developed workforce. Um, my chief inclusion officer hat is really driving the inclusion and diversity strategy within the Inside Ideas group. I have a team of diversity specialists that sit underneath me, and between us we look at where does the strategy overlap with the HR teams, because both departments are essentially helping to drive culture, but also what are some of the things, what are our commitments and other things that we need to do to be able to deliver on our goals within inclusion and diversity.
Okay. And what are some of the successes that you've had so far with your diversity and inclusion programs?
I think the kind of biggest success that we've had so far, although what I would caveat is everything's a work in progress, you're never done in this space, was some of the work that we did last year with our People Powered Change program. So we have about 45, we call them change makers globally, who put their names in a hat to say, we really want to be a part of changing our business, making sure it's a really inclusive place for our employees to work. And we put them through a really in-depth training program, and now they're starting to build strategies and plans that actually we can implement and make our business one of the most inclusive places in the world to work for.
Great, excellent. And what advice would you share with any organization that's looking to start, just getting started with diversity and inclusion?
I would say you need to start with inclusion. I think you need to look at what are the practices and policies that are perhaps excluding people. And don't just rush in and think that you know everything. Really talk to your people. I can never speak from the experience of um, a gay white male. I need to have him in the room that can bring his experiences to the table. So I think it's important that you speak to your people, find out what's important for them, and don't just focus on making tokenistic hires. Really think about how inclusive are we as a business and how we're going to change our culture, because in return the diversity will come from that, because you have inclusive hiring practices, you have inclusive promotions processes, so on and so forth, and the targets will be met by focusing on inclusion.
Got you. And what are some of the key lessons that you've learned with being successful with diversity and inclusion?
I think one of the kind of key lessons that I've learned is that diversity and inclusion can actually be quite divisive without it meaning to be. I think some of the language and the terminology, rightly or wrongly, doesn't necessarily appeal to, it doesn't have a broad appeal. So sometimes the people that you need to be included in that conversation can feel excluded by it. So I think it's really important to, just because there's accepted terms or ways of describing things, doesn't mean that you can't flip that on its head a little bit and try and put yourself into different groups, both underrepresented and not, and say, right, how can we speak to a broad audience to make sure that the people that feel underrepresented in our organisation have their say, but also the people that need to hear them and understand don't feel disconnected from the conversation, and we can take them on a journey.
Got you, got you. And last question, who are the main stakeholders that need to be involved to run successful diversity and inclusion programs?
I think really it has to be everyone in the organisation, but as anyone will tell you, that your line managers really can make or break your culture and make or break your organisation. They really need to be on board. They need to understand what it takes to lead inclusive teams, manage inclusive teams. They need to be culturally aware. They need to have high levels of empathy and ability to check their biases. So I think really a lot of companies kind of focus on the senior leadership teams, who are important. But actually, if you look at the people that are managing and have the most scope when it comes to your people, it's not usually your managing directors or your CEO. There'll be people underneath them that actually have more of the people power. And they're the people that I really think that you should focus a lot of your attention on as part of your inclusion and diversity strategies.
Some great advice here. Thank you. And where can people follow you if they want to follow your advice and what you're up to? Where is the best place to find you?
Best place is on LinkedIn. I try and I'm not very good at posting on LinkedIn, so I'm usually quite busy, but I would say when I do write articles or have any advice, that's usually where I put it.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you so much.
No problem.